All right, guys, back with another one. This one is going to be my Deathstroke inspired like comic book version. Took heavy inspiration from that. It'll come at, this is the way the kit comes. Let me get this all torn open here. Get our parts out here. We have our receiver frame. This one's a easy assembly. Slide. It's our grip surround. I try to make these as many little parts as I can without being too complicated, just for ease of painting. We have our orange tip, which we have to put on. This is our magwell bottom, our trigger, our safety switch on the side, our slide catch lever. This is our rear sight. This is the frame, the rear frame little tang that hangs off the back there. Our hammer, and this is our spring retainer that we put in. When we put in the trigger and the spring, this will go in and hold that, and this gets glued down so it holds the spring and the trigger all nice and tight in there. Let's see, let me push these little parts out the way over here. And a lot of y'all ask me, do I assemble then paint, or paint and assemble? I kind of hand stick it all together and see where I do and don't need to paint, and then I paint everything separate. Just kind of like case in point, this hammer here. If this hammer's on, this hammer just sets in here. Well, if you were to glue this in and paint this all together, you're going to fill in the natural seams in here, which is going to kind of make it all look like one piece. But if you see how much of the hammer is actually visible on, like this piece here, I would take this piece and stick it to, like what I usually do is take little wooden dowel rods and wrap tape backwards so the sticky's on the outside and stick it to it, and then you have full mobility holding the dowel rod and painting little parts. Or sometimes if it's a bunch of little parts, you can set up like a little cardboard box, poke a bunch of dowel rods down in there and stick all your little parts to it, and you can paint them separate. It's another good way to hold little parts. But in here we have a spring, we have a set screw. This screw is not missing its head. Down in here, you use a 1.5 millimeter Allen wrench. Most of the little folding sets that you can go get, like Home Depot, Harbor Freight, wherever, they'll have a 1.5 millimeter Allen wrench, and that's what you use to screw this in. That's for our trigger. And then we have our 4 grip screws that will hold the grip surround on. The type of glue I use is a CA glue. You can use thick super glue. The only reason I don't use thick super glue, or super glue in general, is because how quickly it starts setting. Most of the time it's instantaneously. We're using a CA glue, it's basically thick super glue, but it has a longer set time. Yep, and I have a reminder. It has a longer set time, and it gives you a little bit more work time of your parts and stuff. Then you, once you get your parts exactly where you want it, you just spray it with your activator, and it pretty much sets up instantly. See, just a second here. All right, let's see. Okay, so what we're going to do is get all this together here. Let's see. So what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and put in the trigger first. So we'll need our little spring retainer, and we'll need our spring, we'll need our trigger, and we'll need our set screw. And we'll need an Allen wrench for the set screw. And what I use are these little, well, let's see, all my little bits all mixed together here. I just use a little bit driver. Makes life so much easier. All right. So what we're going to want to do is we'll take our trigger And of course, we're going to drop it in the correct direction. Um, let me see. All right. What you're going to see is this top hole right here. You want to line it up with this hole. And usually I will start these first and then drop the trigger down in there. Well, I guess we actually can still do it, so I can show you what I look at. I will put these to the holes and do like a half a twist, and I will look and make sure that my set screw is 90 degrees to the body. Do another half turn, look at a different angle, and make sure that I'm going in 90 degrees both direction, because our screws cut threads as they go in. And now that we know we're straight, we can go ahead and go in. And we're going to go in just until it starts protruding, and then we'll back out just a hair. Then we're going to take our trigger, we'll drop our trigger in, and we're going to screw this in. And if you miss the hole in the trigger, you'll feel it start getting tight and push the trigger to one side. Just back up and move it around a little bit until you hit the hole. And then we're just going to screw and screw and screw and screw until we get flush with the body, and probably about a half a turn in. This is what we're going to end up with. Trigger just kind of is floppy down in there. So if you notice, there's a hole in the back of the trigger. If you take your spring, sit your spring down in there, and our spring retainer has another matching hole, that's going to get glued down in there, and that's our spring. So I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to hold my tongue just right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my glue and my activator, and don't get glue on your trigger down in here. What we're shooting for is, and that's why when you cut the tip off your glue bottle here, it's good to cut it at a 45 so that you can help guide your glue exactly where you want it. Okay, so what I did is I did some front, back, and two sides, just a little bit, because I mean the stuff's pretty stinking strong. So I'm just going to push it down in there and spray and hold. And now normally I'll take the part that I'm about to put on and spray activator on it, depending, but this I want to make sure I got it down in there and seated the way I needed it to, and glue my thumb to the side, because you know that's what you're supposed to do. If you're model building and you're not gluing your fingers to your model, then you're not doing it right. And the good part is, like, you'll have this frame painted when you do this, but this top part of this frame you're not worried about having painted. So when you put this in, you know, if you have a little glue come out, that's why you don't go crazy with it. But if you have a little glue squish out, that's fine, because ultimately we're going to glue our slide on. And the slide, again, the bottom of the slide, you don't have to worry about painting in here. The only thing that's exposed is just a little bit edge of the bottom of the slide. So we're going to set this over here for a minute. We're going to go ahead and put our stuff on our slide. We're going to need our rear sight and our front sight. And our rear sight goes on just like this, with the little notch opening to the back of the slide. So for this, I'm just going to take a little ziggy zag. Doesn't take much. For this, I'm going to go ahead and spray my part. I'm going to set my part down in there, and I'm going to kind of squeeze it on both sides. And in doing so, you use your fingers and your pressure sensitivity of your fingers to help center it in there. And you get it nice and centered by kind of holding it, because you can feel the features on each side when you do that. It's a good way to help center something, is if you are holding it from both sides and you can feel the shape. It helps big time. So then we have our front sight, And now our front sight will go in, me put it the correct way. The slant goes to the back. Now this is like, you'll see a little raised area on the back side here. This is what you would kind of like paint the little raised area. Like the front sight will be basically painted the same color as the slide, and this little raised like square area, you can paint it like red or whatever, which kind of simulates the way like front and rear sights are. So you end up lining up the colors and stuff. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put a little bitty trail down in there, and end up only getting on one side, but that's fine. And I'm going to take my sight and again make sure I put it in the right direction. Push down from the top, hold it for a second. Probably spray a little bit more. There we go. And so then that's together. All right. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and just glue our slide on. And on this, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take glue and I'm going to run glue on the 45 directly on the edge. And the reason I do it at a 45 is it allows a little bit of the glue to get on the top and a little bit of glue to get down in here. That way, because you don't want a bunch, when you put it together, you don't want a bunch of glue squishing out. So I'm going to just go all the way down the back side, and on the back side you can kind of do the mating surface a little bit. And do the front edge. I am going to spray some activator on there, and I am going to put it on and push it back and hold pressure on it. All right. Keep holding pressure for a minute because I'll put a lot of glue in there. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and glue our mag well bottom on. If you notice, one side is more rounded than the other. If you put it on this way, you'll notice it doesn't match up back here very well. If you turn it around, put it the other way, it matches up with the same curve. And if you notice, this curve matches basically this curve up here. So I am going to, on this one, some of this sticks out and some of it doesn't. So instead of putting the glue on here, because I'm not quite sure what sticks out and what does not, I'm just going to put a little glue on there. Now I'm just going to stick that on there. And again, you know, you can paint the magwell bottom separate. And then put it on. And painting each part separate and putting it together, it helps maintain what are supposed to be actual seam lines. It adds to that realism effect of it. We're going to go and put our hammer in. So on the hammer, we know that the bottom touches in there and we know the front touches. I'm going to spray my hammer. And I'm going to set it right down in there. Got a little boogie right there, but all right, hammer's on, good. We're going to take our little tip, and there's a groove in the tip. It goes facing up. So we're going to take our glue. And we're going to pop that in. We're going to let that set. All right. So now we're going to take our safety. Now there's a notch right here we want to set this safety down just a little bit, just right below the slide, so that there's a little bit of a gap. And because I'm not quite sure where that sits on there, it's best to put your glue on here. So I'm just going to put a dab there and just a little bit of a line across there. I'm going to spray the body, and I'm going to take this and set it right about there, with there being a gap between the bottom of the slide and the top of the safety. And now the slide catch we're going to put on, and it goes right there. And see, that ends up ultimately covering our set screw that holds in our trigger. So I'm going to take a little bit of glue. I am going to spray my body again. I'm going to set that down on there. And I'm going to make sure it's nice and not with a gap between the bottom of the slide and stuff, sitting there nice and pretty. Okay. On your glue, always remember you've got glue that's setting up here in the tip. And if you slowly squeeze your bottle and get some air and release, it will help suck the glue out of there. So if it does happen to dry on you, it doesn't dry your bottle shut. All right, so now we're just going to take our grip and just pop it over everything. If you have painted this, the only thing it's really going to drag on is the release button, the mag release button. You can just hold this apart and it'll bend apart enough and pop it on there. I wasn't too gentle with it because it didn't really matter. So then what we do is we just take our 4 little screws. And all of this stuff matches up with fan fiction props. You know, we don't want to do that and run our screw in sideways. His holster set that he made, the knife fits into the hard case. So does the pistol here. And the shotgun shells and stuff, that all fits his, I believe it's the bandolier for his set. We'll put our little 4 screws in here. And this is one of these things that I would probably put this grip on before I ever paint and start these screws and screw them in so they cut threads, because they are flat blade screws. And you all know how easy it is to slide off of a flat blade screw. And the last thing you want to do is have your pretty paint job on your grip and stuff, and you slide off and just gouge the crap out of it. That's enough to piss you off and make you want to get and walk away for a while. And then we're going to run this one in until it gets tight. We're going to run this one in. And see, there I slipped off and I just nicked my grip. So I'd be really, really pissed if I did that after I painted. All right, so there it is. So on our orange tip, I am going to go ahead and put that on now because I already have a painted version of this. Normally I hold off on putting this on while I do the assembly videos, just because I'm going to do a random paint job or something for someone in my family or whatever, if I ever get around to it. But so I'm going to slide that on, and I'm going to spray and spray. And get my tools over here out of the way, and there we go. Very easy to assemble. It's got very good deep details. Like if you're priming and painting and you want to keep the writing right there, every time after you do a coat of primer, you can go in, even with a pick, and set the pick down in there and go back and forth and clean out what primer. And they're very deep, but it will maintain the detail, but you can make sure it maintains detail by going through and cleaning those out between each coat of primer. And it's just an easy way to make detail stick around. But yeah, so there you go. It's got really good spring tension on it. Like I said, it and the knife both fit Fan Fiction Props holster and bandolier set that he made. But so if you have any questions, just hit me up. Let me know. You can ask questions here on YouTube. It's the notifications aren't the best, so I don't understand why I don't get notified all the time when comments are made or whatever. So it's easier if you just go to the website and shoot me an email from there. The email there both go to me and Michael with Fan Fiction Props, because he sells all his stuff on my website as well as his Etsy and stuff. But yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. I appreciate it, guys.